right, welcome to the Business of Coaching workshop number 3, the science and art of pricing. Today, we're going to be jumping into all things pricing. This is a huge topic, and I am by no means an expert, but it's one of the most common questions we get. How do I price, or how do I increase price? In keeping with talking about the three-factor model, this is going to be the next leg that we're going to dig into. We're going to talk about factors to consider with pricing, strategies to think about, the online coaching market as it stands now, and then how to increase prices. I want to really focus on how to think about pricing more than just tell you what your price should be, or make it sound like it's some kind of formula, because it's not. Price is an emotional aspect of your business. Now, money tends to be something that's not cut and dried, and a lot of it depends on things that vary depending on who you are and who your customers are. Refresher real quick, we're digging into the 3 elements of this 3-factor model for business, where we're talking about cost, price, and value. We dug into value last week. This week we're going to focus on price. So value-based pricing depends, like I said, on who your customers are, what service you offer, and how you want to run your business model. The demographic is something you want to think closely about. CJ did a presentation and has talked for a long time about your values, your identity, and your priorities. That's going to influence who you want to serve, and it's something you want to think about carefully, because the high school student athlete versus the 20-something powerlifter versus the 30 to 40-something-year-old working professional versus the retired 75-year-old are all going to be very different. They're going to perceive the value of your service very differently, as well as they're going to perceive the value of their time and their money differently. The geography that you live, even with online coaching, influences the price point that you're going to be able to charge. If your clients tend to be in major metropolitan areas with high cost of living, they're going to be less price sensitive than people that are in more rural areas. And that has to continue to be something that you think about. The service that you provide is going to be a factor. What are you good at? What do people know you for? And what do your customers want from you? That's going to be a factor as well. And then finally, the business model aspect of it. The price point is going to determine, in large part, a combination of how long people are going to be able to work with you and how much it's going to cost to acquire that customer. So you need to think about the ratio of the lifetime value. Let's say you're charging $200 a month and your average client lasts 3 years. So let's make the math simple. $100 a month for 3 years is going to be $3,600, which would be your total lifetime value of that customer. You tend to want your ratio of lifetime value to customer acquisition to be about 10 to 1. Obviously, the higher the better. So if it costs you more than about $360 to acquire that customer, it starts to make it harder and harder for that process to be profitable. The higher your ratio of lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, the more you're going to be able to effectively self-fund your business to get more customers, because you know that for every dollar you invest in acquiring a customer, you're going to get 10 times or more revenue, or profit out of that transaction. So if you charge, let's say you're somebody who offers a 6-month package and it's $500 a month. Well, now you've got $3,000 of lifetime value. And if you want that same 10 to 1 ratio, you have $300 roughly to invest in acquiring the customer. But your churn rate is going to be higher. So there's trade-offs you have to make in how much you want to charge versus how much it takes to acquire that customer. The acquisition number is a little bit squishier to determine, because a lot of it's going to depend on a combination of your time, assuming you're the one personally creating the social media content or writing the ad copy, or if you have a team of people that you're hiring. Those are all kind of variables that go into that number. But thinking about that at a broad stroke, even if it's just you're operating on your own, thinking about how hard it is for you to get a customer versus how long and how much value you get from that customer is a part of what you want to take into account with your pricing. So there's a couple of three different factors that I think are useful to think about as well when you're trying to define your price point. One is the value metric. So think about this as a measurable, easy to define and measurable uh, quantity that reflects the value that your customer is getting from your product or service. A classic example would be Netflix, hours watched a video. I think of it personally as like number of workouts completed for my clients. The value metric is important because you want to know what that is, but you don't necessarily want to price based on that value metric. Because a classic example of this going wrong would be like minutes of talk time on your phone. If you remember back in the early 2000s, cell phone companies used to charge minutes except for nighttime hours. And because they priced based on a value metric, it actually negatively influenced the behavior of the users. And they would bucket their time into the free hours. And so they get less value from that product or service. What you want to do is understand the value metric and not necessarily price for it, and ideally enable your customer to get increasing amount of value without the second thing, which is usage metrics, which are other metrics other than the value metric, things that you can measure that increase as the user gets more value. So it is a type of value metric, but they're like a shade off. So for example, a usage metric might be number of check-ins that they get, how many times they get to DM you directly, how many times they get a phone call. It might be seeing PRs go up, but they're things that you can measure in addition to your value metric that are likely to increase as the customer goes up. The reason you want to be able to differentiate or have those two kind of in your mind is because the usage metrics are better for pricing than the key value metric. So with Netflix, if we go back to that example, their value metric is hours watched. That enables you to track people binge watching, how often they're watching, how many different movies they're watching. But the usage metric is going to be number of devices or number of logins or profiles, things that show that they are getting more value and that they're using the app more, that you can charge that don't deter from the user consuming or getting incremental value from the product or service. The last leg that you want to think about are the features that you offer. That's going to be a combination of the willingness to pay, which is a whole other subject people have spent years studying, that we don't have the bandwidth to go into. But broadly, you can think like, how willing are your customers to pay for a certain feature, and how applicable is it to the customer base that you're trying to serve? So things that are low willingness to pay, but high applicability are probably going to need to be your baseline level of service, like programming. But as you increase the feature set, there might be higher willingness to pay and high applicability. That might be something you want to charge as a premium service. Maybe that's video feedback. If it's a subset of applicability to your market, you might want to charge that, but low applicability. So it's a small amount of your customer base, but high willingness to pay. That could be like a feature add-on, like nutrition coaching, blood work analysis. Maybe you're a posing coach, competition prep. Those are things where you can tag on a premium. So you want to think about your features as a combination of willingness to pay and applicability to your customers. Okay, let's dig in a little bit to some concrete data. So if you go out and look at the market, there's kind of what I'll call three major categories, maybe a fourth if you want to split out the premium tier a little bit more detail. But typically what you'll see are budget tiers in the $20 to $60 a month. That's going to be templates, group programming, basic kind of general strength training. And I'm talking about specifically within the strength training market, although I think this applies to other markets as well. But basically, the more general you get, the more non-customized it's going to be down in that 10 to 20 to 60. Then you kind of get into a mid-tier range in the $100 to $200. That's going to be for more personalized programming and some level of individual interaction. Premium tier, anywhere from 200 to 500 plus. That's going to be a lot of interaction, super individualized, customized workout plans, and probably nutrition guidance, maybe even some one-on-one calls, things like that. But I would say if you look at, especially where Turnkey Coach operates and all the coaches that I've talked to, it's somewhere on average between that $150 to $400 per month range. As you break this down into a little bit more granular detail, again, the budget range is probably going to be maybe you're getting one session per week and very relatively generic programming, low level of maybe certified personal trainer or entry level, not very much experience. Mid range, you're looking at somewhere 100 to 200 with 2 sessions per week. Customized programming, maybe some basic nutrition advice and progress tracking. A little bit higher level of certification. I'm not saying that a CSCS, I'm not trying to qualify, say that is going to get you this kind of hour or this kind of monthly rate. It's just call it a recognizable placeholder for some sort of, certification saying that you are qualified and maybe a little bit of experience. Coaches that are offering 3+ sessions per week, highly personalized, with nutrition plans, injury prevention, regular feedback and adjustments, with a more specialized certification and more experience are in this 200 to 500 range. And then you've got the elite, what I'll call level. There are some people that are charging 500 plus that have a ton of daily interaction, a lot of one-on-one interface, and they tend to be highly specialized with certification and proven record, working with elite athletes or professionals. Common features you see out there are pretty much everybody in the personal or the online coaching world is moving towards that tailored, customized, or bespoke programming. Video analysis is starting to become a more common. Regular check-ins, anywhere from 1 to 4, 5, 6 check-ins per week. The phone calls are pretty common, although I would highly discourage that as a feature. I would recommend it be more of an add-on. They tend to just be schedule killers and undermine the value of asynchronous coaching, but it is a feature you'll often see. I would just go back to that willingness to pay and applicability framework. And then we'll talk more about the cost side of it, but you've got to weigh and balance, like how much of a total cost impact is that feature going to have on your schedule. Community access is also another big part, and it's something that we're trying to address with Turnkey Coach by adding group chat into the app. That's going to be releasing probably this month. And then price differentiators. How the more customized and individualized you get, the more experienced coaching you get. Nutrition is a big one. And then technology continues to be something that is evolving. Obviously, Turnkey Coach started by adding automated metric tracking, and we're starting to do research and development on AI-driven insights, and fitness assessments will continue to be something that differentiates different products. Talking a little bit more about that in that bullet I mentioned at the beginning, things you want to look at as you're evaluating the effect of pricing on your business. I think it's important to not just think of pricing as a thing that you're outwardly charging your customers, but it's a feature in your business, and you can use pricing to influence metrics like lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, and churn. And if you start out with pricing, at let's say you're not getting, or maybe it's too hard to get customers at a certain price point, and your lifetime value is not high enough for that difficulty of acquiring customers, and your churn is too high, maybe your price point's too high. If you go to a lower price point, you might see your lifetime value actually increase because they're staying with you longer. It's not as hard to get customers, and your churn is lower. On the other hand, maybe you're getting too many clients. And so, and maybe interestingly, sometimes the lower price point has higher churn because they're, if you think about the Groupon model, you offer out a really low price and the quality of your customers go down. So maybe your cost of acquisition goes really down, way down, but your churn goes up and your lifetime value goes down. So this is where it starts to kind of turn into a little bit of an art where you need to try to figure out where your price point is to be able to balance all of these aspects of your business. If I put this into, if I put the market out there visually, I think and I don't have a ton of hard data to back this up. This is we'll call it anecdotal, but I'm seeing two major buckets starting to emerge in the market. You've got a lot of products out there in the market offering templates and group training. You've got I think, a growing number of kind of mid-tier in this 200 to 300 range. And then you have the celebrities, premium elite coaches out there in the 400 plus range. But as a coach in your market, again, you got to take into all those variables. I think that's going to really impact or influence where you are on each of these zones. Like if you consider yourself where I think most of our audience is somewhere in this range right here, the 2 to 315 range, or maybe it's like 185 to 315 if we want to just use plate math. Your demographic, your geography, your personal experience, and your business output goals are going to determine where you want to be in this box. As a general rule of thumb, the lower your experience, the smaller your market, the or the more price sensitive they are, the more you're going to end up at this range. The more experience you have, the bigger platform you have, maybe on social media or just mailing list, whatever, the higher end you're going to be able to go. Even people with relatively large social media presences struggle going, I think, much over 300. You have to be very specialized and very good at marketing yourself to get up in that 300 plus range. And I think below the 185, again, depending on your service model and how you deliver, it starts to be difficult to make a good return on your invested time below that 185 level. Again, you've got a lot of levers to pull there that we'll talk about on the cost side. But when you think about, as you start getting down into this lower end of the band, you need to be very cognizant of the usage metric and how much time that usage is consuming of your time to deliver the service, while ideally keeping the value metric high, because you want the user to be feeling like they're getting a lot of value, even if the usage is lower. So great. I think probably the most concrete example I can give would be number of check-ins per week. If you want to start moving, or if you want to offer a price point over here, you need to keep the value metric high, which, like I said, might be number of completed workouts, because you can still have a client complete 4 workouts or more per week. But the usage metric in the sense of how many video feedback they get could still be 1. So they get high value metric, but it keeps the usage metric relatively low in terms of your time. And that's going to open up an opportunity to offer maybe a lower price point. From a strategy perspective or an execution perspective, what you might want to try if you're starting out would be to, I would recommend start at a relatively low price point that you can still support your business model goals and test the market, see how it responds. If you want to get more advanced, there are tools that enable you to test different price points in different markets or different geographies. You can actually do that on your website now. But if I were to just keep it simple, I would say you're probably going to want to start out offering a price point around here, test your market, test your demographic, see how that impacts your business. And then as your roster fills up, you can start moving to the right. If you start, and we've seen this, we have coaches that go out and offer the premium product before they've really built traction or tested to see if they have product market fit, and they just don't fill up their roster, or they get 1 or 2 and then it's high churn. Because I think, again, the number of people out there in the world that are willing to carry a $300, $400, $500 monthly reoccurring expense is relatively low. So you've got to have a very wealthy market that wants to work with you in order to be able to sustain that kind of a monthly expense. There are markets out there. I've seen, physique prep, bodybuilding prep. They have really high end expectations, and it's, again, be careful what the customer is that you choose, because the higher price point, once you start getting into that 300, 400, 500, that's going to be a very high expectation customer. So just, again, think carefully about who it is that you want to serve and which ones align with your values, identity, and priority. Okay, last piece. I'm running short on time, and I want to make sure we got some Q&A, but I want to run through real quickly because I get this question a lot as well. How do I increase price? And we'll include this in our follow-up, so don't worry about having to write this all down. But this is just a checklist of things that I recommend including in the process. Let's say you're and we've seen this a lot with people that have been doing a business for 5, 6, 7 years. They've got 20, 30, 40 clients, and there's 15 different price points. And some of them are, they haven't changed their price in like 6 years. This is just one of those things. As part of running business, you got to do it. And I think you probably need to be doing it once a year, if not more often, but, at least once every year or two, because even though I in caps say don't mention inflation, remember that you've got inflation eroding your profit margin constantly. So if you're not increasing your prices every year, you're losing money. The approach that I laid out here is basically figure out what your price points are going to be, list out all your customers, figure out how big the impact is, and use that to develop very personal communication with each of those customers. If somebody's getting a $50 or $100 or $150 and it's like a 2x increase, somebody that maybe you started out working with them at $75 a month and you're now offering your service at $200 a month or $300 a month, you're going to need a more carefully worded email or communication to let them know. But somebody who's getting a $5 annual increase, that might be a little bit closer to a form letter that you're just sending out as part of your routine business. But it's important to know, and identify who's you're really impacting. Make sure you're emphasizing the investment that you're making in yourself, the software that you might be using, the tools, the business, the education that you've built. We are all, as coaches, constantly learning, and it's important to emphasize that you're not just raising prices to make as much money as possible, but you're genuinely raising prices so that you can invest in the business and their service. If you're barely scraping by with the business, the quality of your product back to your customer is not going to be good. And so it's important to protect your profit margins so that you can invest in the service, and that's worth emphasizing. Make sure you highlight what you've learned and what you've developed. Let them know about the price increase that's coming. I tend to, and what we've done at Barbell Logic is you let them know this is the new price, but then you can reward them for being a loyal customer and honor their price for some period of time. Maybe it's 3 months, 6 months, where they're effectively getting a discount. This might also be actually an opportunity to talk about, if you want to sign an annual contract, I'll honor your price for the next 12 months or whatever it might be. And then I like to give them an out for those that just it's really going to hurt. Let's get on a call and talk through it. And maybe you've got a situation that you want to just make the personal decision to give them a break. That's going to be up to you. That's your call. But I think having an out to at least open up the conversation is nice, rather than just getting a really cold hard email that says, hey, this is it, and there's no wiggle room. Even if they don't take it, I think it's a nice touch. This is an example. Again, we can include this in the content that we write up. This is a real world experience example at Barbell Logic. We've got a lot of customers going through exactly the scenario that I mentioned before. Some of them paying, in the low hundreds. That we need to, our current price is like $315 for the exclusive coaching level. So just as an example, like I'm just not just making this up on the fly. This is things that we are actively doing at Barbell Logic, and we'll share that with you. So homework assignments. Before I open up to Q&A, think about who is your ideal customer, who aligns with your values, identity, and priorities. What's your geographic and demographic market? What skills and experience do you have that differentiate you from other online coaching services? What's your client's value metric? What features and service do you want to offer? And how do you want to include those in different price packages? What is your lifetime value to CAC ratio that you can afford? Don't forget to include both your time and your money. And if you're going to increase prices, list out each of your clients with the before and after price and evaluate the price increase impact. And then write your personalized letters to each customer. Because remember, every dollar that you increase your price drops immediately down to the bottom line and compounds, because you're going to then get that price increase reoccurring each month. So it's one of the more emotionally difficult levers to pull, but probably the most impactful and relatively simple, in the sense that you're not doing anything other than changing the numbers on the page. Like I said, obviously you're having to go through the communication with the customer, but you're not changing your service unless you're reorganizing your offering. You're simply raising the number. All right. A ton of content, and I barely scratched the surface, but I'm hopeful that this at least gives you some concrete things to think about with your business and some tools to go about either building your price point, your price offerings, your packages, and how to actually go implement that with your customers. With that, we'll open up to Q&A. We got one from Eric. Here's a comment. If I offer personalized coaching with video feedback and a separate package that includes all of that with nutrition, is it worth trying to target template clients at a much lower price point, or stick with mid-tier, or is that being a spaghetti factory coach? This is actually something we're wrestling with at Barbell Logic. I think I saw Brittany Snyder's on this call as well, that we have nutrition coaching as an upsell. And right now it offers a phone call. And I think we have our value metric is too close to the usage metric, if I go back to that mental model. So if I just be more clear there, the client is getting value in that they get 2 check-ins per week and they get a phone call every month. But the cost of that usage of the coach trying to show up and be on that call is too close together. So we're trying to figure out whether to offer templates, or do we do it with just video feedback and not the calls. I don't think what you're suggesting there is too much of a spaghetti factory, although one thing that I would suggest that you consider is that I'm not totally clear on what you're offering here, but if the only thing you're offering is the template, I would think real hard about like how much work it is to acquire those customers and deliver good value at the price point that you're offering, because I suspect that the cost of delivering that service is higher than you think, unless it's truly just like, hey, sign up for this template. But if you have a slick way of delivering your nutrition add-on in addition to your strength service, I think that's personally a great way to increase the value metric from the customer's perspective with low usage or low effort from on your behalf, because they're just getting to get some structured nutrition advice in addition to your strength coaching with low effort on your part. So it adds a lot of value at a low price point. And what I've seen with nutrition coaching is doing much more than the basics needs to be a really high ticket item, because it is such an emotional, high touch day-to-day. There's so many choices throughout the day that a nutrition client makes that I think it's really hard to deliver a high value metric to the client without a very high cost impact to you as a coach. Let me know if that answers your question, Eric. All right, we got one from Andres. How do you organize your public product page when you have different price points for different clients for almost the same service? If your services are that close together, I think then that's a whole nother topic I could have gone into today. I think that's actually a problem with your price points. You should not have offerings in which the value metric is too close together, because for two reasons: that's confusing to your clients, and it becomes too difficult for you to manage profit margin. I would suggest, when you think again, go back to that usage metric versus value metric. Try to see if you can find a way to offer services in which the price points have clear distinction between the value that the client is getting, that nudge them towards the service you want to offer. So let me be real concrete there. Let's say we talk about number of check-ins per week. I think it's common practice right now to show three public product offerings with very clear, distinct value metric differences. And the most straightforward one I can think of is number of check-ins per week. You could have a high ticket, unlimited number of check-ins per week that you probably don't want a lot of clients doing, because that's going to require a lot of work for you. But if somebody does do it, they need to pay a premium. That could be maybe your premium or your elite level, the 300 plus service. There's probably a sweet spot in the middle that I tend to experience is somewhere around, probably two, maybe it's four check-ins a week, depending on your situation, where you can deliver that level of service efficiently. The customer gets a really high level, a high value from it, and you can maintain good margins. And then a lower tier that you might reserve for people that are a little bit more self-sufficient, that maybe you only check in with once a week. So your usage metric is low, but the value metric is still high. They've got 4 check-ins. But the thing is, you want to offer that price point. It needs to be different enough that the customer sees a perceived benefit from going to a lower price point, but don't make it one for one. Like, let's say you're 1 check-in per week at the lower price point and you're 2 check-ins at the mid price point. You don't want it to be half as much. Make it like 2/3. So maybe that's your $200 offering, and then you offer $275 for your 2 check-ins, and then maybe you offer like $400 for your premium. I'm just making up numbers here, but you want it to be you want it to be far enough away that somebody's going to feel like they're getting a deal, but close enough that most people are going to go, you know what, I might as well just get the 2 or 3 or 4 check-ins, whatever it is. I might as well pay the extra $75 because I'm getting significantly more value. And because that's the one that you as the coach are going to be making your most money. So anyways, it's a hard to answer question to answer quickly. Hopefully that does. But I would say your price points are probably too close together if the services are the same. I would work on differentiating the amount of value that the client is getting more clearly and spread them out more. One thing, while maybe somebody's typing out answers or thinking, I'll give you an example of a pricing conversation I was having with a coach this week. Or trying to think about a very specialized skill they have. This is somebody who's in that premium and elite level service offering, because they've got so much experience and it's in a highly specialized area where people are willing to pay a premium. There's ways to think about offering that. That would be, to me, an example of like the add-on feature. So you might not want to have your baseline price be at the premium level, but if you have additional service or skills that people occasionally want to offer or to sign up for, give them the ability to add that on to their baseline service, or to buy a package for a period of time, that you can basically prorate the full cost. So the example I'm thinking of was somebody who's a very experienced and skilled handler for elite level powerlifters, like literally setting world records. That's a hyper specialized skill, and it's difficult to really even cover the cost of what it might take to even go to a meet and spend a whole day. It's hard to say, well, from an hourly rate perspective, how do you quantify that? But if you take that service and break it up, think about how long you're going to be working with that person. You can add that on to their baseline monthly recurring product, still capture the value of what you're providing, but not force them into a situation where they're having to maintain that premium or that elite level service indefinitely. So that's another one of those things where you want to think about willingness to pay and applicability. Is it time sensitive, which I also find nutrition to be somewhat in that category? Maybe you want to offer that high premium nutrition coaching service for a 3-month package or a 6-month package. And then they have a baseline template package they can downgrade to, that continues on as an add-on to their baseline service, but they don't have to carry that high cost indefinitely. All right, we're a full 6 minutes over. Oh, we got one more question. Here we go. How would you package in-person training with online coaching? I offer both, but I end up with too many available products, and I find that confusing even for myself. That's a great question, and I'm gonna partially answer that question, mostly because next month we're gonna do a series with 4 different coaches that are offering different service models that include everything from 100% online to those that have brick and mortar gyms and offer online coaching as an upsell, as well as online coaches who do sort of like 24-hour key card and then offer online coaching on top. So all that to say is there's a lot of different ways that people are solving that problem. It's everything from the in-person being the primary service and the online being just the way they deliver programming, to the online coaching being the primary service with kind of drop-ins being an add-on. So I would say that it really depends a lot on what you want your product offering to be. I'll give you one example of how I've seen somebody, well, I'll give you 2 examples. One is that we've got a coach who his goal is to get everybody to be an online client, and he uses his in-person business as a feeder to his online coaching business. So he charges a premium for 60 to 90-minute sessions that are kind of one-off or maybe packages, but the entire intention from day one, he starts selling them on moving to become an online client. And that's the only purpose of the online the only purpose of the in-person business is to generate, it's part of his cost of acquisition, or his customer acquisition cost, basically. So he's working with people online to help accelerate building the relationship, demonstrating the value of the service, and then moving them into online coaching. So he sells a in-person as basically a drop-in, one-off, or some collection of packages. That's example 1. Example 2 is we've got coaches who've got brick and mortar group classes where he sells them as a novice class, and these are fixed hour classes. I think they are hour and a half in the gym with a set group of people. He's got a fixed number of spots. I think it's something like 8, 10, something like that, based on the number of racks and bars and plates that he has. And he sells those at 12-week increments. And at the end of completing the 12-month package, you're eligible to sign up for his, what he calls intermediate level group. And that's a different time slot. And it's only once a week. So he offers that at a lower price point. But as part of moving on to the intermediate level, he offers online coaching for the other 2 sessions per week. In both cases, it's 3 sessions per week, if you will. And in that case, what that does for him is it's both a force multiplier for his time to be able to offer intermediate coaching to more people at a lower usage rate, if we go back to that metric. And it's also a force multiplier for the space that he has in his gym, because now he can serve that intermediate level client 3 times a week. The deal is they can use his gym for that one in-person session, and then the other 2, they either do their home gym or they go to a public gym, or they use 24-hour key card access to go to one of the non-group classes at his gym. So he can maintain the relationship. He can offer a lower price point. He can utilize his gym better, and he uses his time more efficiently. And then he's also offers an advanced level where they're completely 100% remote online. So again, that's a huge open-ended question, difficult to answer. Hopefully that gives you a couple of ideas to think about, but I'd say it largely depends on what your in-person coaching setup is, how much time you want to spend in the gym, what your demographic is like. Um, I have heard some people that have challenges converting people from in-person to online, because people go to in-person because they want to specifically work with people in a group setting. So you've got it. That goes back to who's your customer, what's your demographic. If you're dealing with a lot of 60, 70, 80-year olds, they might be a little bit hesitant to go into that online space. You got to think about that a little bit. But uh, those are two examples. Like I said, we're going to go into 4 more case studies next week. Eric Feigl, who's been on the call the last week or two, is going to be one of them, and he's got a combination of brick and mortar and online coaching gym that we can dig into his scenario a little bit more. All right, guys and gals, hopefully that helped. Please, if you have any feedback, questions, comments, or concerns, send those to me, ajackson@barbell-logic.com. And looking forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good one.